A teenager stands proudly in a crisp uniform, only to be publicly humiliated by an arrogant veteran cop who thinks it's a cheap Halloween costume. The officer laughed, ready to slap on handcuffs. But he had no idea this one arrest would end his career in spectacular fashion. Autumn leaves scattered across the bustling pavement of Oakwood Avenue, a lively commercial stretch in the heart of Chicago's West Side. Shop owners swept their storefronts, and morning commuters hurried toward the transit station with coffee cups in hand. Standing perfectly still at the intersection of 5th and Oakwood was Malik Harrison, a 17-year-old high school senior. Malik was not wearing his usual jeans and hoodie. Today, he was dressed in a pristine, navy blue dress uniform. The fabric was sharply creased, the gold buttons gleamed under the morning sun, and a polished silver badge rested heavily over his left chest. This was no ordinary day for Malik. For the past 3 years, he had poured every ounce of his energy into the city's prestigious Police Explorer Academy, a rigorous program designed to bridge the gap between law enforcement and marginalized communities. Malik had not just participated, he had excelled, breaking every academic and physical record the Academy had ever seen. Just the night before, in a private ceremony at City Hall, Mayor Thomas Sterling and Police Commissioner Arthur Pendleton had awarded Malik the rank of Honorary Youth Deputy Commander. It was a brand new title, one that carried administrative weight and a genuine, state-issued badge. Malik was standing on the corner, waiting for a designated city transport that was supposed to take him to the downtown plaza, where he would be officially presented to the public. Cruising down Oakwood Avenue in a black and white patrol car was Officer Bradley Hayes. Bradley was a 12-year veteran of the force, a man whose career had stalled at the patrol level due to a long string of civilian complaints regarding his temper and heavy-handed tactics. Bitter, cynical, and deeply prejudiced, Bradley viewed the residents of the West Side not as citizens to protect, but as subjects to control. He drummed his fingers on the steering wheel, his eyes scanning the sidewalks for anything that annoyed him. That was when Bradley spotted the teenager. Braking sharply, the patrol car jerked to a halt by the curb. Bradley narrowed his eyes, staring through the passenger window. He saw a young black kid standing on the corner, decked out in what looked like a high-ranking officer's dress uniform. To Bradley's trained but biased eye, the uniform looked too good, too official. It infuriated him. In Bradley's mind, the badge and the uniform were sacred symbols of authority that belonged only to the chosen few people like him. The sight of a neighborhood teenager wearing the blue and gold felt like a direct insult to his entire existence. Throwing the cruiser into park, Bradley shoved his door open and stepped out onto the sidewalk. He adjusted his heavy utility belt, his hand instinctively resting near his taser, and swaggered toward the intersection. "Hey, you!" Bradley barked, his voice cutting through the morning traffic. Malik turned, his posture remaining perfectly straight, a habit ingrained in him by months of grueling drill exercises. "Good morning, officer," Malik said, his tone respectful and steady. Bradley stopped 2 feet away, looking the teenager up and down with an exaggerated expression of disgust. He let out a loud, mocking laugh that drew the attention of nearby pedestrians. "Good morning? What kind of clown show are you running here, kid? Halloween isn't for another month." "I'm not wearing a costume, sir," Malik replied calmly, keeping his hands visible and clasped behind his back in a standard parade rest position. "I am waiting for my transport to the Civic Center." "Oh, a transport to the Civic Center," Bradley sneered, leaning in closer. "And who are you supposed to be? The police commissioner? A 4-star general? Where did you steal this gear, kid? Did you buy it at a pawn shop? Or did you strip it out of someone's locker?" "Neither, officer. This uniform was issued to me by the city. My name is Malik Harrison, if you'd like to verify." "Verify?" Bradley interrupted, stepping into Malik's personal space. The officer's face grew red, his arrogance swelling as a small crowd began to form. People stepping out of the nearby Oakwood bakery paused to watch. "I don't need to verify anything. Impersonating a police officer is a Class 4 felony. You think you can just slap on a tin star and stand on my corner acting like you own the place? Sir, It is not a tin star, Malik explained, his voice never rising above a polite conversational level, though his heart was beginning to beat faster. He knew the statistics. He knew how quickly situations like this could spiral out of control. This is a registered badge. I am the youth deputy commander. If you call dispatch and give them my badge number, shut your mouth, Bradley snapped, his patience evaporating. The fact that the teenager was not intimidated, that he spoke with such articulate confidence, only made Bradley angrier. He wanted fear. He wanted submission. Instead, he was getting a calm, logical defiance that he couldn't stand. Bradley reached out and aggressively poked Malik in the chest, right on the polished badge. I know every deputy commander in this district. You aren't one of them. You're just a punk playing dress-up, and you picked the wrong cop to mess with today. The atmosphere on Oakwood Avenue shifted from a bustling morning commute to a tense, suffocating standstill. Onlookers who had initially paused out of mild curiosity were now freezing in their tracks, sensing the dangerous escalation. A woman named Clara, who ran the local florist shop, stepped out from under her awning, her brow furrowed in concern. A delivery driver parked his truck and pulled out his smartphone, instantly hitting record. Malik took a deliberate half-step back to create a safe distance between himself and the aggressive officer. Officer, please do not touch me, Malik said clearly, projecting his voice just enough so that the gathering bystanders could hear. I am perfectly willing to cooperate. My identification is in my left breast pocket. I have a letter signed by Mayor Sterling and Commissioner Pendleton. May I reach for it? You aren't reaching for anything, Bradley shouted, his hand dropping to the cuffs at his belt. You think you can forge a letter from the mayor? You really think I'm that stupid? Turn around and put your hands behind your back. You're under arrest. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Clara the florist took a step forward. Hey, leave the boy alone, Bradley. He ain't doing nothing wrong, she called out. She knew Officer Hayes. Everyone in the neighborhood knew him, and no one liked him. Bradley whipped his head around, glaring at the crowd. Back off. This is official police business. Anyone interferes, and you're going in the back of the cruiser too. Turning his attention back to Malik, Bradley unclipped his handcuffs. The metallic rattle sounded unnaturally loud in the sudden quiet of the street. I said, turn around, fake cop. Malik did not move. He locked eyes with the veteran officer. Officer, I am respectfully refusing your unlawful order. If you arrest me without verifying my credentials, you will be violating Department Protocol 4B regarding the detainment of authorized city personnel. I am asking you one final time to radio your watch commander. The mention of specific department protocol made Bradley pause for a fraction of a second, a flicker of doubt crossing his mind. How did this kid know the exact code for authorized personnel? But the doubt was quickly swallowed by his massive ego. He looked at the phones pointed at him. He couldn't back down now. If he called dispatch and actually ran the kid's name, he would look weak. He would look like he was taking orders from a teenager in front of the whole neighborhood. Protocol? Bradley laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. I'll show you protocol. Without warning, Bradley lunged forward, grabbing Malik roughly by the shoulder of his crisp uniform, intending to spin him around and slam him against the brick wall of the bakery. But Malik had been trained by the best defensive instructors in the academy. He didn't fight back, but he immediately shifted his weight, dropping his center of gravity to brace himself, making it impossible for the older, out-of-shape officer to throw him off balance. Bradley grunted, struggling to physically dominate the teenager. The beautiful navy blue jacket tore slightly at the seam near the shoulder. Get your hands off him, a man in the crowd yelled. I'm complying. I am not resisting, Malik shouted, keeping his hands wide open and visible to every camera recording the incident. You were damaging state property, officer. Check the badge. Furious and embarrassed by his inability to easily manhandle the boy, Bradley shoved Malik hard against the wall. The impact knocked the wind out of Malik, but he maintained his composure. Bradley grabbed Malik's wrists, twisting them painfully behind his back, and clamped the cold steel handcuffs tightly around his wrists. He squeezed the ratchets down until they bit into Malik's skin. State property. "My foot," Bradley hissed into Malik's ear. "You're going away for a long time. Fraud, impersonating an officer, resisting arrest. Your life is over, kid." Bradley spun Malik around to face the crowd, holding him by the collar like a trophy. "Show's over. Disperse," he ordered the angry onlookers. But no one moved. The crowd had grown to nearly 40 people, effectively blocking the sidewalk and spilling into the street. The delivery driver with the phone stepped closer. "We got it all on video, Hayes," the driver shouted. "He told you to check his ID." Bradley sneered. He reached over with his free hand and roughly unpinned the polished silver badge from Malik's chest. He held it up to the morning light, examining it. It felt heavy. It looked incredibly detailed. The city seal was perfectly etched into the center, and at the bottom, the numbers 001 were engraved in black enamel. For the first time, a cold knot formed in the pit of Bradley's stomach. The badge looked too real, but he pushed the feeling down. It had to be a high-end replica. There was no way a kid from this neighborhood held badge number 001 of any department. "Nice piece of metal," Bradley mocked, tossing the badge onto the concrete sidewalk. It hit the ground with a sharp clatter, skidding toward the gutter. A collective gasp went through the crowd. Even those who didn't understand the exact situation knew that throwing a police badge into the dirt was a massive sign of disrespect. Malik looked down at the badge he had worked 3 years to earn, now sitting in the grime of Oakwood Avenue. A muscle twitched in his jaw, the only sign of his mounting anger. "You shouldn't have done that, Officer Hayes," Malik said quietly. "It wasn't a threat. It was a statement of absolute fact." "Move," Bradley ordered, shoving Malik toward the patrol car. Before they could take 3 steps, a deep, rhythmic rumbling echoed down Oakwood Avenue. It wasn't the sound of a single vehicle. It sounded like an entire fleet. The crowd turned their heads, looking up the street. Approaching the intersection were 12 police motorcycles, riding in a flawless V formation, their emergency lights strobing in brilliant flashes of red and blue. Behind them were 2 massive black SUVs with tinted windows and government license plates. The procession was not moving fast. It was gliding down the street with a heavy, undeniable authority. The motorcycles began to peel off, strategically blocking the intersection from all directions. Traffic on Oakwood Avenue came to an immediate halt. The entire street was being shut down. Bradley stopped in his tracks, his grip on Malik's arm loosening slightly. He stared at the approaching convoy in confusion. There was no radio chatter about a VIP movement in this sector today. The motorcycles parked in a semicircle, boxing in Bradley's patrol car. The officers on the bikes, members of the elite traffic division, did not look at Bradley with camaraderie. They stepped off their bikes, resting their hands on their duty belts, their expressions stone cold behind their mirrored sunglasses. The 2 black SUVs pulled up directly to the curb, right where Bradley was holding Malik. The engine of the lead SUV purred quietly before shutting off. The crowd fell dead silent. Even the delivery driver stopped shouting, keeping his phone pointed steadily at the vehicles. Bradley swallowed hard, his arrogant swagger evaporating completely. He looked at Malik, then at the SUVs, a horrifying realization beginning to creep up his spine. The rear passenger door of the first SUV opened, and a shiny, black leather dress shoe stepped out onto the pavement. Polished black leather touched the asphalt, followed by the crisp, sharply pressed trousers of a Class A dress uniform. Stepping out of the lead SUV was Arthur Pendleton, the chief commissioner of the city police department. Commissioner Pendleton was a legendary figure in local law enforcement, a towering man in his late 50s, with a stern, deeply lined face, silver hair clipped with military precision, and a chest adorned with 4 rows of commendation ribbons. Following closely behind the commissioner from the second vehicle was Deputy Chief Samuel Harrington, head of the Bureau of Internal Affairs, along with 3 heavily armed members of the elite Dignitary Protection Unit. The silence on Oakwood Avenue was absolute. The only sound was the low, rhythmic hum of the motorcycle engines and the crackle of a police radio from Bradley's cruiser. Bradley's heart plummeted into his stomach, a cold sweat breaking out across his forehead. His grip on Malik's shoulder instantly vanished. He took a stumbling step backward, his mind frantically trying to process the impossibility of the situation. The chief commissioner did not randomly show up to routine patrol stops on the west side. Commissioner Pendleton ignored the veteran patrolman entirely at first. His piercing gray eyes scanned the scene. The aggressive posture Bradley had taken, the hostile angle of the patrol car, the crowd of citizens holding up smartphones, and finally, the teenager in the torn dress uniform, handcuffed and pressed against a brick wall. Then, Pendleton's gaze dropped to the ground. Lying in the dirty runoff of the gutter was the gleaming silver badge, the numbers 001 catching the morning light. Pendleton walked forward slowly, the crowd parting slightly, to give the imposing man a wide berth. He bent down, his joints popping slightly in the quiet street, and picked up the discarded badge. Pulling a clean white handkerchief from his breast pocket, the commissioner meticulously wiped the dirt and grime away from the polished silver star. Officer Hayes, Pendleton's voice was dangerously low, carrying a quiet authority that commanded instant obedience. Care to explain what exactly is happening on this corner? Bradley swallowed hard, his throat suddenly bone dry. Commissioner, sir, I was on routine patrol. I spotted this individual impersonating a high-ranking officer. He was wearing department-issued garments and carrying a forged badge. I detained him for fraud and impersonation, per Municipal Code 184. Bradley's voice trembled slightly, lacking all the bravado he had displayed just 3 minutes earlier. He desperately hoped the lie sounded plausible, praying the commissioner was just passing through and didn't know the teenager. Pendleton turned the cleaned badge over in his hand, feeling the heavy, authentic weight of the metal. He finally looked up at Bradley, his expression devoid of any warmth. Impersonating an officer, Pendleton repeated, the words tasting like ash. Did you run his identification, Officer Hayes? Sir, he refused to provide valid. I asked if you ran his identification through dispatch. Pendleton barked, his voice echoing sharply off the brick storefronts. No, sir, Bradley stammered, his face flushing crimson. The forgery was obvious. I was securing the suspect before calling for transport. Pendleton shook his head in absolute disgust. He stepped past the trembling patrolman and walked directly over to Malik. Despite the painful angle of his handcuffed arms and the tearing of his uniform jacket, Malik stood as straight as possible, his chin held high. Mr. Harrison, Pendleton said, his voice softening considerably, dropping the harsh authoritative edge. Are you injured? No, Commissioner, Malik replied steadily, though his shoulders ached terribly. Just a bit bruised, and my jacket took some damage. I am deeply sorry for this, Pendleton said, maintaining eye contact with the teenager. The crowd watched in stunned fascination as the highest-ranking law enforcement official in the city publicly apologized to a high school senior. Pendleton turned his head slightly. Deputy Chief Harrington. Samuel Harrington stepped forward instantly. Yes, Commissioner. Remove those cuffs from Deputy Commander Harrison immediately, and take possession of Officer Hayes' body camera. I want the footage uploaded directly to the Internal Affairs secure server before we leave this intersection. Right away, sir, Harrington replied. The deputy chief pulled a universal handcuff key from his belt, stepping behind Malik to unlock the restraints. Bradley felt the world spinning. The title rang in his ears like a gunshot. Deputy Commander Harrison. Commissioner, wait, Bradley pleaded, taking a desperate step forward. This kid, he's a teenager from the projects. There's no way he's a deputy commander. It's a prank. You're being fooled. Pendleton spun around, closing the distance between himself and Bradley in 2 massive strides. He stopped inches from the patrolman's face, furious energy radiating from his posture. You absolute disgrace to the uniform, Pendleton hissed, his voice trembling with barely contained rage. The young man you just assaulted, humiliated, and falsely arrested is the newly appointed honorary youth deputy commander of this entire city. A position created by Mayor Thomas Sterling himself to bridge the disastrous gap between this department and the community, A gap created by archaic, prejudiced bullies, exactly like you. Bradley opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. His entire career flashed before his eyes, disintegrating into dust. This convoy, Pendleton continued, gesturing to the elite motorcycle unit and the black SUVs, was dispatched specifically to transport Deputy Commander Harrison to his inauguration ceremony at the Civic Plaza. You didn't intercept a criminal, Hayes. You assaulted a designated city official on his way to meet the mayor. The crowd erupted. Clara the florist clapped her hands over her mouth, laughing in sheer disbelief and triumph. The delivery driver pumped his fist in the air, his camera still rolling, capturing every glorious second of the arrogant officer's downfall. I didn't know, Bradley whispered, panic completely taking over. Sir, I thought it was a stolen uniform. I was just trying to protect the integrity of the department. You protect nothing, Deputy Chief Harrington interjected, having successfully removed the cuffs from Malik. Harrington walked over to Bradley, his expression stone cold. Your jacket is thick with civilian complaints, Hayes. Excessive force, racial profiling, insubordination. You've skated by for years because witnesses were too afraid to testify. But today, you decided to unlawfully detain a decorated cadet in broad daylight in front of 40 witnesses while wearing an active body camera. Harrington held out his hand, palm up. Your badge and your service weapon, Officer Hayes. Right now, Oakwood Avenue had never seen anything quite like it. The local bully, the officer who had terrorized the neighborhood for over a decade with petty citations and aggressive stops, was being publicly stripped of his power. Bradley's hands shook uncontrollably as he reached to his belt. He unclipped his holster, handing over the heavy black firearm to the deputy chief. Next, he fumbled with the pin on his chest, pulling off the silver shield that had defined his entire identity. He placed it in Harrington's waiting hand. Officer Bradley Hayes, your police powers are hereby suspended indefinitely, pending an immediate and expedited termination hearing, Pendleton announced, ensuring his voice carried to the recording cell phones in the crowd. Furthermore, you are being taken into custody by Internal Affairs for investigation into battery, unlawful detainment, and civil rights violations under color of law. You're arresting me? Bradley gasped, his face draining of all color. You arrested a boy for standing on a corner, Pendleton replied coldly. Turn around and place your hands behind your back. The poetic justice of the moment was not lost on anyone. Deputy Chief Harrington unclipped a fresh pair of handcuffs and roughly secured Bradley's wrists behind his back. The sharp click of the ratchets echoed the exact sound Bradley had forced upon Malik just minutes prior. Two officers from the Dignitary Protection Unit stepped forward, taking Bradley by the arms and marching him toward the back of an unmarked black vehicle. As he was shoved into the back seat, the crowd broke into genuine applause. It wasn't a riotous cheer. It was a deep, communal sigh of relief. A toxic element had finally been removed from their streets. Pendleton turned back to Malik. The teenager was rubbing his wrists, the red indentations from the tight metal bands clearly visible. The commissioner held out his hand, offering the freshly cleaned, silver badge. I believe this belongs to you, Deputy Commander, Pendleton said respectfully. Malik took the badge. He didn't gloat. He didn't look back at the car holding the disgraced officer. Instead, he carefully pinned the shield back onto his torn uniform jacket, right over his heart. Thank you, Commissioner, Malik said quietly. We have a spare jacket in the transport, Pendleton noted, gesturing toward the lead SUV. We can get you changed on the way downtown. Mayor Sterling is waiting, and I think your speech just got a lot more important. Yes, sir. It did. Malik turned to the crowd before getting into the vehicle. He caught the eye of Clara the florist, who gave him a proud, tearful smile. He gave a small, respectful nod to the people of his neighborhood, the people he had sworn to represent and protect. The door of the SUV closed, and the police motorcycles roared back to life. With the sirens blaring and lights flashing, the convoy pulled away from the curb, leaving the empty, abandoned patrol car of Bradley Hayes sitting uselessly on the corner of 5th and Oakwood. The fallout from that morning was swift, brutal, and totally unprecedented in the history of the city's police force. The video recorded by the delivery truck driver went viral before the mayor's ceremony even concluded. It dominated the midday news cycle across the country. The visual contrast was undeniable. A calm, professional black teenager in dress blues being physically assaulted by a red-faced, screaming veteran cop, followed by the immediate, cinematic arrival of the chief commissioner. District Attorney Robert Callahan, sensing the immense political and public pressure, did not hesitate. Within 48 hours, a grand jury indicted Bradley Hayes. The charges were severe: aggravated battery, official misconduct, and false imprisonment. Because the incident involved an officially appointed city representative, federal civil rights investigators also opened a secondary probe into Bradley's past arrests. Facing overwhelming video evidence, his own body camera footage, and the damning testimony of his own commissioner, Bradley's police union refused to fund his legal defense. His career was officially terminated by the police board the following week. Stripped of his pension and facing years in a state penitentiary, the disgraced officer was forced to take a harsh plea deal, permanently branding him a felon and ensuring he would never work in security or law enforcement again. As for Malik Harrison, the incident on Oakwood Avenue fundamentally altered the trajectory of his life. He didn't let the viral fame go to his head, nor did he allow the trauma of the unjust arrest to deter him from his goals. Instead, he used the massive platform he had unexpectedly gained to advocate for aggressive, systemic reform within the police academy. During his speech at the Civic Plaza, wearing a fresh jacket and standing beside Mayor Sterling, Malik addressed the incident directly. He spoke not with anger, but with a profound, piercing clarity about the realities of policing in minority neighborhoods. He eloquently argued that real power did not come from a gun or a pair of handcuffs, but from community trust, accountability, and the courage to stand completely still in the face of blinding ignorance. 4 years later, Malik Harrison graduated at the top of his class from the state university, holding a degree in criminal justice and public policy. He didn't return to the streets as a patrolman. Instead, he walked straight into a senior administrative role at City Hall, working directly under the mayor's office to completely rewrite the procedural training manuals for every incoming police recruit in the state. Oakwood Avenue remained a bustling, vibrant street, but the atmosphere had changed. The tension that used to grip the neighborhood whenever a patrol car rolled by had slowly begun to dissipate. The people knew that the system was flawed, but they also knew that change was possible. They had seen it happen right on their corner, on a crisp autumn morning, when a young man refused to be broken, and the truth shut the whole street down. This story proves that true authority comes from integrity, not intimidation. Malik stood his ground with dignity, exposing a corrupt officer and sparking real systemic change in his community. Karma always collects its debts, and the truth will always shine through the darkest abuse of power. If you loved this story of ultimate justice, please hit the like button, share it with your friends, and subscribe for more.